1758 and once more into the breach. Prussians start marching down. See if they can grab the depot. They couldn't quite reach it. Lousy die roll by Fredrick. The quite wonderful Clermont. You can always roll. Well, he could roll a 6. But he feels very safe taking forced marches compared to anyone else. So he marches over, grabs the depot ahead of time. But that's not necessarily a guarantee here. I just want to make sure that the Prussians don't destroy it. And depending on my roll, I should be able to get Brown over there. Lacey marching off to get to Königsgrätz. He's not far enough that, well, he could actually build his depot. He's within range. So maybe it's worth doing simply, because he'll only need one once he gets into Silesia, then he can grab all kind of stuff. And now the Prussian depot that was left down here becomes a danger, where the Austrians could conceivably use it. The Prussians aren't anywhere near it. And the Russians off on their own. Are they within range? 1, 2, 3, 4, yes. So they're certainly within range here, but it was whether they could reach here. So they too can build a depot in order to move forward and continue taking Prussian territory as far as I can see. So now we go to the coalition side of things and let them move. Yeah, I start thinking, oh, geez, I could leapfrog ahead of my depots and such not, but that doesn't really buy me anything. All it does is gets me out of supply, so I lose a strength point. Because I can't start building the depot at Königsgrätz until this one's complete and it's in supply. Same thing here. I can't start the siege until I've got things in supply. I gather the French and Austrian forces to face Fredrick. I'm going to force him to attack me, or else I'm going to hold him off there, pin him down, and take other things. Those are really the two options. Right now, Fredrick does not want to launch into that space because that gives the first attack option over to the Austrian and French combined forces. They probably aren't going to run away from him if he attacks, but who knows, especially since they have a depot there. Okay, so Fredrick attacks. He's got about half the size of the Austrian forces, which means we're going to be back on here because he's got, 16, 18 to 26, 39. Oh, I hope that's not third now. Nowhere near. Okay, and he's got his +1 because Braun is the bigger force. Whole bunch of French leaders, most of them pretty lousy. Let's put them all there. Okay, that gets me a 4 on the shit table. And that's 20% to 5%. Now, my 18, 20% means I lose 3. Take 3 losses. And 39 at 5% is only 2. And we'll of course take French. Which means it's a tie again. And both forces will be stuck there at the depot. Prussia may sit around and allow another attack. Simply because there's no real... I've got to win a battle. I've got to win a battle here for anything to happen. But the coalition force is willing to chance a battle in order to try to end this a little quicker. Because they could almost certainly win this without winning the battle, but, it's just sort of this, okay, let's give them a chance and maybe speed the game up a little bit one way or another. So we're going to probably see a battle on the Austrian side as well. Okay, so I brought Rutkowski up as well. Other movement, other actions that were taken, Lacey and the Ruskies. I think it's Apraxin I have on top there. Saltykov and Apraxin are both rank 1, so they shouldn't normally both be in the same scenario, but the way the game works with the campaign, you get other leaders, and if you have good leaders, you don't ever lose them, basically, when you have them in a single pile. Neither one could reach the... Lacey was like 1 movement point short of entering here because of the Prussian unit in there. But what do we have here? We have like 39 to 12, 15. That's certainly 2 to 1. And I think that goes up to 3 to 1. So then we're hitting here, and we're actually at even on this. However, the smaller force has the advantage always. And it's not just Fredrick who has the advantage as the smaller force. The smaller force just has an advantage in certain ways. So we get a net of 2, and the attacker takes 10, the defender takes 20, and a leader. Well, we're getting down there. 12, 13, 14, 15. 20% of 15 is going to be 3 strength points, which makes sense. But 10% of 39 is going to be 4 strength points. I don't know if I should get rid of Rutkowski, but he is able to produce an extra strength point off of the Saxons each turn, pretty much no matter what, as long as I have 1 left. So what that means is we capture a French strength point, and the coalition forces have actually been defeated and pushed away. Yippee! They shouldn't attack. Yeah, I mean, even at almost 3 to 1 odds, you still have trouble. But Fredrick is getting down. He's at 12 strength points. He's getting down to the point where he does not have the capability to besiege things pretty soon because he can't build a depot. And on the various turns, let's see. The Prussians started to build a depot, intention to go to Dresden. Braun was unable to recover his forces, but he marched down to Torgau. He's actually inside. It's essentially impossible for the Prussians to take Torgau. They could expend all their forces, lose Fredrick to capture, and which of course he'll never get repatriated, and not take the city. So, because he doesn't have enough strength points, he'd lose all his forces. But we are beginning to build the siege works there. In both cases, it cost me an extra movement point to force march into there, into the citadels, but you know. And that pushes us over to Fredrick's turn. Now, as long as these are demoralized, I can leave a strength point there, and I can go grab, say, Magdeburg or Dresden or something like that, and that will help me avoid a loss. But I'm very close to my strength point limits right now. Of course, Magdeburg's particularly important because it's part of Prussia, and it's far away from the Russians. So the Russians, if they take these 2 cities, it's over. And maybe I don't want to face the Russians. Maybe I want to go take Magdeburg and make sure that I keep a little piece of Prussia alive. Screwed up, actually. I didn't realize I had a depot below me. So actually the Prussians, I didn't roll a movement. Let's see if they could have made it to Dresden. Yeah, they could have made it to Dresden last turn, so they're going to be setting up the siege right now. And they got away 1 turn with this. They will not be in Magdeburg because that was closer to the enemy, and they wanted to be down here. So now they're setting up the depot here, which is not in range of there. It's in range of this one, so we're okay for a little while, but we got to make it through another turn of Braun not being able to take out our our depot, which is problematic. I don't see any force marches possible, so we go over, so we go over to the Allied or coalition side, and let's see if Braun wakes up. Yeah, oh well, it was worth a shot, right? We couldn't reach Magdeburg either, so it doesn't make much difference. With Braun awake on his turn, both he and Clermont have moved up, taken that depot. Fredrick force marches, loses another strength point. He's down to 10. He basically can't besiege anything that's not within range of a fortress anymore. And that means, though, that we do have another battle. And this is on the coalition side. They're going to attack again for the same kind of reasons as last time. We're over on the 3-to-1 or 300% table, and still no modifier, so 6 can't be bad. We get a P. I believe that destroys them. The entire force is captured. That's the game, man. Fredrick, most of my troops, everything's there. I could keep playing, but I don't see any point to it. Make a couple checks on those fortresses, see how things are going. Lacey has a +1/4. This is just capitulated. And we'll give him honors of war because what the hell, it doesn't matter. And I forgot Apraxin's high initiative. He's really good at sieges. And I was just giving him a 1 on these, so 6, yeah. This one also falls. And for the same kind of reason, we might as well grant the honors of war because the Prussians don't have any leaders. They can't move, you know. And you can see, I mean, with the Allied forces here, they're not within range. This was a clever place for a depot. I don't know if that's where it originally was, because I feel like there was a depot left behind. I may have bumped it. But I'll have to build another depot closer to Berlin to take that from here. And then there's just 2 cities to fall, or there's points in Silesia I can scoop up with Lacey. There's just no chance of this continuing in any other way. So we finished up in 1758, and you know, honestly, I had more fun with this than I think I've ever had, and it's the campaign game, flawed as it may be. It adds a framework for the scenarios in a way that just makes me happier. I don't like playing, oh, let's just play a year of this war. I like it to be within some sort of framework. It feels very gamey, but I'll get into more of that on my review. So what happened here? Well, one of the things is, I think the decision to invade Saxony is unfortunately not a great one. I wanted to do the historical. I had a fair chance of getting Hanover on my side. And as you see, you know, not only did I not get Hanover, but the coalition did not get the Empire or the Swedes. So in some ways, they're not a balance, but in some ways you can see things could have been more or less historical, just the way the charts fall, the luck, the dice, etc. In terms of once that was decided, then, I mean, and the fact that I didn't take Saxony, you know. One thing I don't like about this, and I don't know how ahistorical this is, but I'm used to sort of the Napoleonic type games, right? And World War II as well, where, hey, I conquered territory, I get something for it. And it feels kind of crappy to like capture Saxony and not be able to gain anything out of it. I feel like there's some productive capability, something that should be added to my capacity for having conquered things. although to some extent, maybe not, or whatever effect that is probably a lot less than most grand campaign type, strategic games tend to show. They tend to feel a little bit fantasy-ish in terms of like, oh look, I get all the resources from this province. Now, Empires in Arms has sort of a modifier to that, which is that you don't, if a country like Saxony is its own country, it gets double the value from its territory than you do. And for the major powers, though, little changes in territorial ownership can be fairly significant. But only after a peace and they're kind of integrated in. So, it's not like just grab territory and be able to get production. So it would make sense that you couldn't grab production in, say, Austria. Silesia would be kind of a weird situation where I feel like between the years, either side could be gaining something from that. And there's a great deal of wealth in Silesia. And that extra wealth can be exported out. And maybe it doesn't help you build up too big an army, but it certainly helps you make, build your artillery and stuff like that. Even if you're just stealing the church bells, to melt them down. You're getting something out of it. There's some resource value to conquering stuff. So I think there should be a little bit of that that's not there. But anyway, the failure to take Saxony put me in a problematic position. So instead of being in this nice, I can launch my attacks into Austria from Saxony and or Silesia. Other things that really hurt, the Prussians didn't get leaders for the most part. They got like one leader. We saw the French get tons of leaders, etc. And leadership is, it's not what killed me. What killed me was the eventual attrition. It's definitely not the case that Prussia can just have too few troops and count on winning by having smaller forces. Eventually you get attrition down, and that's what we saw. And the decision maybe to only build 20% of my army rather than the 50% the Austrians built. I think the campaign, as I'm looking at this more and more, I'm beginning to think my initial thoughts about the campaign are actually right. Fucking just crank out your, 300% of your army. Just throw it down if you can. To make that reasonable, there are force limits. But I don't think those force limits apply to Austria or Prussia. I don't remember seeing anything about them. I only saw them here. Maybe I missed something in the force increment phase, that there's some absolute limit to the size of the armies that Austria and Prussia could field, which would make sense. You wouldn't want to see Austria drop down 300% of their army on year 2, and then just mop things up. Of course, if both sides did that, then there would be no reinforcements for the rest of the war, unless Hanover gives subsidies. But that feels completely kind of wrong, right? It feels like there should be some sort of limit on what kind of production you can put into Austria and Prussia. So my feeling with the campaign game is that it does not really do the job that you want it to, but it's worth playing once, and now can we tweak it? Can we make it better? My sort of production-based campaign game, I don't think that that's any improvement for reasons that I talked about. I don't really think that conquest of Saxony necessarily produces the kind of income that you'd consider from the Napoleonic period or World War II or something like that, where it was easier to mobilize a people. Saxony would be a conquered territory. It wouldn't really be providing the kind of manpower and resources that maybe, in the Napoleonic period, you have the revolution and everything, which at least for the French kind of explains why they'd be able to pull more forces from, say, the German states, or from Holland or something like that. And there's still force pool limits essentially in like War and Peace and games like that. So it's not like it's this humongous, production center in most of the games, but it does help. But anyway, I'm kind of thinking about some of the tactical choices that I made, some of the actions that I made. This is a tricky game, is the thing. It's like you can't attack on your own turn if your enemy doesn't want to get attacked, because they can run away. You can only attack on their turn, and only if they're advancing on you. So this was very, very bloody, largely because once I started getting the advantage with the coalition, I'm like, let's just end this, let's not prolong the pain. But ideally, I probably would not have been engaging with these guys. I would have been falling away from Fredrick and trying to make advances elsewhere. However, the idea of getting sort of the supreme victory, capturing Fredrick and his army, or capturing all the cities in Prussia or whatever, that draws me in every bit as much as it would a real leader, a real situation. I don't feel like I should be gaming the game, as it were. There is some gaminess to the game, though. There is no question about that. And, some of it, hey, look, I can cut off your supply. I mean, clearly cutting off supply is a part of the real campaigns, but it feels too hard to sort of protect your supply. It's like, I guess if I had multiple forces, I could leave one force with the depot and one force out to try to handle the siege, like the field army and the besieging army. But there's still a fairly heavy advantage to having a big force. And if you have a decent leader, Frederick's obviously going to be pretty decent. Most of the Prussian leaders are pretty decent. But Braun is good. And you can't lose him. Do the Austrians always have a good leader? I don't know. Let's see what we're looking at here. We have Daun here. I don't think he's terribly good. He's okay. He's pretty good. In fact, he's damn good. Not much initiative, but that's okay. Lack of initiative hurts, though, after the battle. It's not just a movement thing. What do they rate Loudon? Just curious. I see Daun again. Daun. Should be seeing Charles. Not Charles from the Napoleonic era, obviously, but the other Royal Charles from this era. Oh, yeah, it looks like we have Daun throughout. Yeah, they make Loudon pretty decent too. The high. Yeah, Charles isn't too bad. He's not great. About equivalent to the French leaders. Anyway, and the Russians kick ass. If they can win a battle, they'll pursue your ass off. So, yeah. I don't know quite what to say, I mean, in terms of like, I don't have a very good grasp of how to manipulate this game as it kind of should be. But I had fun playing it. It's just, previously I think I didn't have an idea how to manipulate it, and I had kind of a miserable time playing it. And this time I had a lot of fun, mainly because of the campaign roles. So I'll come back with my review, such as it is. I don't feel like I understand sort of the tactics of how to manipulate the game, you know, well enough to really speak too much to it. It feels gamey. Some of the mechanisms feel a little gamey, but less so than, say, Friedrich or Maria does for the same era. And yeah, there's something nice about a traditional board, hex encounter game compared to, much as I love Clash of Monarchs, and I really did like it. The decisions that you're making with cards always feels a little bit gamey to me, although that game mitigates them a good deal. Anyway, I'm just babbling for the sake of hearing myself speak right now because I used up so little of the video finishing this up. So we'll call that a wrap, and I'll come back with the review.